are, about the 10th of May. It's been 5 months and some change since I was here at the cabin. Bad weather and snow back in November ran me off this project. I've been thinking about it all winter. Now that I can finally get back into this property, it's time to get started and get some stuff done. There's enough snow left for the cooler, but other than that, it's pretty much all gone. Now my intention with this trip is to stain the outside of this cabin. I'd like to finish up the tongue and groove, and then I would like to get all the tongue and grooves sealed. But if you've ever built anything, you know that you never get as much done as you hope. So we'll see how far we make it. I will say this, looking the place over, it looks exactly the way I left it. I don't see anything out of place, nothing's damaged from any weather. One little corner of my siding has been chewed up by a porcupine, but other than that, it's pretty much perfect. Now I'm going to mask off anything I don't want to stain. I'm going to try not to make it too big of a mess. And then we're going to get to work staining this place. One of the questions I get asked all the time about this cabin is, what did it cost? What was the complete cost of the cabin? And I think by the time it's done, it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about $5,000. If you were to build it today, you might be able to get it for a bit cheaper than that, because lumber prices, as of May 2023, they're quite a ways down. 2 years ago, this would have been ridiculously expensive. Now the product that we're using to stain the outside of the cabin is for exterior wooden floors. I bought it because it was on half off sale. I like the color of it, and if it's good enough for exterior wood floors, it's definitely good enough for siding, and it was cheap. I also bought a small pump sprayer so I could spray it on the wall and then even it out with a brush. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but we're going to find out.
Here, this is the point in the process where I pour the stain into a container or into that pump sprayer right on my brand new deck, because I do stuff like that all the time. What I'm actually going to do, but take a second, I'm going to put it all on the ground and I'm going to do it that way.
Try not to make a mess. That's the name of the game. I don't really have high hopes for that pump sprayer because it's pretty cheesy. And this stain is thicker than what I thought.
This is also the time in the job when I just dive into this without even thinking again, and I don't put some rubber gloves on, and then tonight, tomorrow, the next day, and the day after that, I got brown stained hands.
I threw in a package of rubber gloves when I packed to come up here, but when I got here I found out there was only about 3 gloves in the package, so I'm just going to have to try to keep reusing these ones. I did a test patch on some scrap, and I think it's going to look really good. So we'll load up the pump sprayer and give it a shot. Now I've used a pump sprayer before to put on log home oil, but that's a Chapin pump sprayer and they're steel and you can pump those things up like an air compressor. This thing's pretty corny. I tried and tried, but I couldn't get it to do anything more than just squirt out a stream. So that idea went away. And the thing that I found out right off the bat about this stain and about this T111 siding is you have to paint an area about 1,000 times to get it to cover, because the surface is so rough and there's so many nooks and crannies that it takes such an effort just to fill in all the little spots that don't get painted when you put it on initially. I spent more time repainting an area and working stain into little valleys and holes than anything else. And if you think it's boring to watch a guy paint the side of a cabin, you should be the guy painting the side of the cabin. It took me about 2 hours and 20 minutes to paint the front of this cabin. And it's going to be, spoiler alert, it's going to be about the same for each one of the walls. But I do have to say, I really do like the color of this stain. It's kind of a cherry mahogany type of thing, and it looks just as good as I hoped it would. After taking those gloves off and putting them back on a few times, man, it's almost impossible. You roll them up when you take them off, and then they want to stick together. You know, I mentioned that Chapin pump sprayer earlier. That sprayer, you can buy them at concrete supply stores. You can put motor oil or maple syrup into a Chapin pump sprayer, and it will spray it out as a fine mist. Because they're steel, you can really pump them up with a ton of pressure, and they use them for spraying oil onto concrete forms or spraying a curing sealant on freshly finished concrete. The only problem is they're about $125 and most people aren't going to be able to justify that. But if you had a big log house to do, or you had a lot of this kind of work to do, you know, it'd be worth picking one up.
You know, the problem with this stuff is this wall is so porous and so rough. You got to paint an area like 10,000 times to make sure all the little holes and nooks and crannies are filled in. Man, you have no idea how long I've been at this. This seems to work pretty good. Circular action for filling all those holes in. On the other hand, I think my shoulder's broke. Man, I tell you what, when I started this job, I hoped that my stain would last through the whole project. Once I got started on it, I was just hoping it'd run out soon so I could get on to something else. Never been more glad to be done with a painting job in my life, and I still have one wall to go. But thankfully, I'm out. I don't have any more stain. Get this brush rinsed off and some mineral spirits here. At this point, what would Bob Ross do? That's what he'd do.
Well, now the staining's done. That pump sprayer was an absolute bust. It was just too weenie of a product to handle that kind of work. I spent the rest of the day just lollygagging around, checking out the property. When I'm up here by myself, I like to just wander around and look at stuff in the woods. I do a lot of wandering. And after a day of painting, man, there's nothing better than just doing nothing. Now the following day, I'm back at it, and I'd like to get some tongue and groove done today. I've got the rest of the ceiling to do, and that shouldn't be too difficult. It's all just straight boards. And then I have the two gable ends to do. The gable ends are all going to be cuts. Every single board is going to need at least one cut, and most of them are going to need two cuts, and a lot of them are going to need two angled cuts. So I'm not really looking forward to the gable ends. One question I get asked quite often is where I get my tongue and groove from. I buy my tongue and groove from Menards. I don't know how many Menards there are in the country, but here in the Midwest, there's quite a few Menards, and they're basically like a Lowe's or a Home Depot. But the quality of their tongue and groove is superior to anything Lowe's has. Lowe's generally has a poor selection, and a lot of their stuff has been up there for a long time. It's super dry, a lot of it's warped, been picked through. I don't think it's a priority for them, but Menards generally has really good quality material. They generally have a lot of it. It's just the place to get it. There are some Amish folks around here that buy it by the semi-load and they sell it at a really fair price, but they're kind of out of the way for this particular project. So, out of convenience, I'm using Menards. The air compressor I'm using, I picked up at a yard sale for $20. The hose is from Harbor Freight. It's the smaller diameter flexible hose. The brad nailer, I bought that at Menards too, and I bought the cheapest one that they sell. It's like the store brand tool shop, I believe. I think that tool cost $20 originally. You don't need anything fancy when it comes to air tools. Air tools generally are robust and they're really cheap, and even the inexpensive ones are going to do just fine. Especially for somebody like myself or a lot of you folks that, do a job like this once in a great while. If you're doing trim carpentry every day, you might as well just buy the best there is, because it's going to be something you're going to really rely on. But for me, I've had this brad nailer for probably 10 years and it's never failed one time, and it cost next to nothing. Well, one thing is true on every construction project, especially remote, you always forget something. And I forgot my bale of insulation for the gable ends, and without the insulation, I can't put up the rest of the tongue and groove. So for right now, this is where we're going to have to leave it. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name's Dave Whipple. You've been watching Bush Radical. Be radical, eh? See you soon.